everybody, and welcome to Tek Talk. I am Jennifer Cooper. I'm the fractional CMO here at fOCUS360. And today, our special guest is Lindsey Ricciardelli. She is the founder at Hello Homebuyer. Lindsey is an accomplished marketing strategist and an absolute breath of fresh air to the conversations around customer data and customer experience. And so, Lindsey, I would love to welcome you to Tek Talk today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Yeah, very excited about our conversation. So Tek Talk is always a little bit of a bite-sized information about what's going on with technology, specifically in the home building real estate industry. But today I thought about, let's talk about consumer behavior and interests, and because we can get a lot of information, a lot of insights on how to make our technology experiences better. So this really is a valid conversation that I don't feel like we're hearing enough conversation around consumer insights. We're getting a lot of data around leads and conversions, which are all important, but there's a lot of information behind those leads and conversions that I don't think we talk quite enough about. That's why I'm so excited to have Lindsey here today. If you follow her on LinkedIn, she talks a lot about this topic. But I want to go ahead and kick off and give you just a few minutes or moments to give us background around your services and your passion area here in home building. So kind of tell us about you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I have been, in and around the real estate built environment for 15 years now, specifically home building. I've worked at creative real estate marketing agencies. I've actually worked at an architecture firm, in an engineering firm, in an appraisal management company, alongside home builders, master plan developers, like kind of the whole, I've ran the whole gamut, right? But all focused on marketing strategy and client service. So developing that marketing strategy, making sure that it's executed and paying off on that brand promise, but then also making sure that the client, the customer, sees the value, like there's results and they see the value in the work, right? And so that's kind of how I've been marrying like the marketing strategy, the customer data, and the customer experience, because it all blends together. It all works together. And it should work together seamlessly, right?
Yeah. I love that you come in with like this unbiased approach. Like you're just kind of, I think, fresh eyes to the data, different ways of looking at the questions, and then being able to give whether you're working with a master plan developer or a builder, you're able to give them like some really fresh insights. And I think there are a lot of, actually, I know there are a lot of assumptions, either based off traffic or maybe some other data points of like that their customer experience is filling the bill. But it's really interesting how you can dive in and get some other information. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today is home buyer truths. And people may be saying, well, what do you mean by truths? So I wanted to clarify, that's your truths are really uncovering your experiences, your expectations, your desires, your needs around, focusing on the data from the home buyer customer. So it's really more firsthand qualitative ingredients, right? Am I kind of paying off what these truths mean?
Yeah. And really when I, like in my past experiences, I was always like, if you have to create a big marketing campaign that's supposed to really resonate with your home buyers and bring leads in, how are you talking to those customers? Are you creating things that are, what's that one thing that you're creating that's really resonant? And I always thought we have stacks of market research and surveys, which is absolutely helpful, right? But it tells you kind of what happened, not why. And that's where you just need to, we need to talk to our customers. And so many brands just don't, not just home builders or, real estate. So many brands just don't talk to your customers. I've sat around like conference room tables where everyone's kind of trying to figure out what it is, what the issue is, what's not working. And I'm thinking we just need to talk to the people who are actually buying the product. And that's a branding marketing tactic. It's usually the first thing that should happen. And I think it should be an ongoing, consistent practice. And so I just started interviewing home buyers, potential home buyers and home buyers who had just like closed or had been sitting in their house, right, for the past 3 to 6 months. And it's amazing what they tell you if you ask and if you talk to them. It's amazing. And that's why I call them truths. Also because I have I have a master's in psychology and I've been studying neuroscience. There's a real, like, you can't ask people necessarily what they're going to do. You have to ask them what they did. And that's where the truth comes out. And that's where they really tell you about the experience. That's where they really tell you about, like, I was expecting this, but I didn't get it. And that was interesting. Like, I wish I had this, and so I
Mm-hmm.
have lists of things. And when you talk to people, you don't necessarily need to talk to 40 people, because there's something called data saturation, where typically after 8 to 10 people, they start to say the same thing. And
Yeah.
so you start to get these patterns, and I'm like, oh, like, there's so many different things that you can refine from like a home builder standpoint: marketing, messaging, sales experience. You don't have to steer the ship or spend thousands of dollars like fixing something. You can
Yeah.
really just refine and enhance the experience to make it better for the customer. So
So what's
that
your
they,
ideal, yeah, what's your ideal sample size? I mean, so say, you're going into a community that's multi-gens, you've got a lot of different demographics moving in. Would you be interviewing very specific demographics, or would you still try to kind of do a cluster, kind of a sample? I guess it probably depends on what you're trying to get, but as you know, you're going to get different wants and needs out of different demographics.
yeah, totally. And I think what we all kind of know in the industry too is like, oh, the 55 plus home buyer actually thinks very similar to the millennial home buyer,
Millennial.
right? Like, that's what
Yeah.
all the research says. So I think it depends on what the business objective is. If we're looking to get more leads, or if we're looking to, maybe there's a neighborhood that's stalled, what neighborhood in that community is stalled? Is it a 55 plus neighborhood? Is it a single family? Is it a move up? So I think
Yeah.
the sample size, not the size, but the sample of people would depend on the product within the community, right?
Sure. Sure.
But again, the service that I offer, it's not more than 10, because then it's somewhat of a waste of resources and budget, and right, because you
Yeah.
don't need more than 10, especially
Yeah.
not to get those truths that you can apply to messaging, the way you talk back to the customer. um,
Hmm.
they hear their own words and their own language and their own stories, and that makes their ears perk up. They pay more attention.
Yeah.
um, and something that I think is really important, that sounds, I heard someone use the term squishy KPI, but it sounds a bit more squishy, but it is true because it's brain science, is when people talk about themselves and someone else is listening, a part of their brain lights up and they attribute that to positive sentiment, right? And
Hmm.
so just being the brand, just being the home builder that's taking time to be like, hey, I want to sit down and have a chat with you about your experience, because I want to make the experience for your future neighbors better. That right there makes your home building brand more positive to like your
Yeah.
customers. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so I
You're
know
adding
it's
an emotion of care. You're adding an emotion of care, and that I matter
empathy.
because you somehow are asking me specifically. And people do like to talk about themselves. Like, it's a weird
Yes.
psychology, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, and people, and especially now, I always say, like, consumers are more fickle today, and it's true, right? People
Hmm.
care about, and it's not just Gen Z, even though Gen Z is coming up, right? And they'll be buying homes
Yeah.
eventually, but they really care about the experience. And so it's important to not say, which one of the truths that we hear often is, I feel like after I get the keys, like, the builder just disappears, right? And that's frustrating. And so,
Problem.
people, how do we fix that? If we're hearing that, what can we do to refine that process a bit for them, so that's not what
Hmm.
they're telling people, right?
Hmm. Yeah, because the home buyer may feel like we have really good communication with our buyer. We're sending these X amount of touch points. Well, if the customer feels like I'm not getting enough, maybe they needed more touch points, or maybe the touch points aren't fulfilling their needs. That the only way you would know that is through those conversations, because you may have checked a box and said, we've got every point covered. Well, do you?
Mhm.
Right? So I want to talk about these truths. So I obviously the truths you're going to uncover are going to depend on the study and the area and maybe the assignment you're given. But are there any kind of general truths that you feel are surfacing overall about the home builder market today? I mean, the market's changed. We've had a lot of change in confidence, and change in rates, a change in buying power, changes in pricing, things around like the whole NAR settlement, things that just make shake up, the whole home buying bubble. What are some of the truths you're finding? Are there any themes, I guess, to kind of generally talk to it today?
Yeah, okay, so there's definitely three that I think are most applicable to like our market today. But one that I hear all the time is consumers still perceive. So consumers, the NAR settlement is like in our industry, we hear about it all the time. Like we're trying to understand it. Consumers aren't trying to understand it. Like I asked my husband about it the other day and he was like, what? What's NAR? Like right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
all of like, I shouldn't say all, but consumers still believe they need a realtor to buy a house, right? And what I'm finding is and because I talk to a lot of realtors too and brokers, I talk to anyone who's close to the home buyer and they're close to the home buyer, right? Home buyers perceive they need a realtor, but a lot of realtors go, I don't work with new construction. They kind of just, no, I don't work with new construction. Well, why not? Because I think they already have their list of like folks that they use. So I just don't. And I'm thinking all of these realtors have big audiences. They're all very good at their social media presence. They're good at marketing themselves and they're good at marketing the places that they're trying to sell. That's a miss, right? Like we need to empower realtors and bring them in to work with them because we're missing large buckets of people and they're doing a lot of the work for you.
I
So
know.
that's definitely one thing is that the home
I
buyers.
heard that twice this week, by the way. What you just said, I heard that twice this week in other markets. And I was like, that was just an interesting comment.
Yeah, and I've seen some developers do it really well. Like they've dedicated a whole social media page to showing love to realtors. I thought, how smart, right? And then there's others that, they have a few like wine and cheese events and bring realtors in here and there. And like, that's good too. But I think there's a gap with, with realtors and new home builders that could be filled.
And it could be by market and by area too.
Sure.
For sure. Could vary because I noticed completely different realtor relationships. For example, with one of my southern home builders, they're just really, really tightly niche, and in others, they're feeling like they're floundering for the relationship. So it could really vary depending. Some home builders may say we are good. Other markets might say that is a problem. So it's something to pay attention to.
And that's a really good point is yes, sure. In like today's market, you probably are good. Like I think like in California, I've had a developer tell me we're not worried about leads right now. We're worried about getting these homes built fast enough because the market is hot. So I totally get it. It's just one of those things that you should be thinking about. You don't want to react to it when the market tanks or when something goes down. Like let's build these relationships now. It should just be an ongoing effort or tactic, right?
Yeah. So there's two other truths we talked, or two others I think, two other themes.
Yeah. So I call the other one Home Buying 101, which sounds, obviously you need to educate people on home buying, but home buyers that I talk to, and I've talked to all ages, right? We're like, geez, I wish I learned about this in school because it is an exhausting process. I don't know what to do. I've had people say, I wish I had an agenda. Like, I wish I had a guide. I wish someone could help me. I wish the realtor was more helpful. I wish, right? Around like just understanding the process and all the things that go into it. And I'm on a lot of community like interest lists to see how builders are communicating. And again, there's a few that do it really well, but I definitely think there's a gap in communication. I think we're in the industry and we have our heads down and we're doing all the work. But I think sometimes if we look up, we go, the home buyer doesn't
know what we know.
They don't know what we know, right? And I think that's one of the assumptions that you talk about is I think we need to kind of look up sometimes and talk to the home buyer and go, what is it that you need? So I think the education is missing. And that's something that you can I always share ideas like a home buyer handbook, or which sounds big and bulky. And I don't mean that. I mean, let's create some content and then create some short form snackable content for these buyers who are always online, always doing their own research, right? They do 80% of the research before they come to your site or on property. but they all say they need it. All of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And then it's how do you drill it down and digest it? Because you can also overwhelm if something looks too complicated. I saw a diagram the other
Mhm.
day where I was just like, oh my gosh, this would make me never want to buy a new home because now this looks like too much. So but then is there too much of our speak, our industry speak in there that like actually 1, 2, 3, and 4 are like our problem? That doesn't need to be in the customer journey, but they just need to know holistically that this is happening at that phase.
Yeah.
So I think it's one, being aware, and then two, it's from a marketing standpoint, really thinking concretely of how do you deliver the message and boil it down so it's like digestible and it's not overwhelming and it's comforting that I'm like, okay, this is what's next in the process. Because I think you made the exact point. We're too close to it sometimes.
Or two, yes. So for a project one time, I called a bunch of sales, like a particular project, all the competitors, maybe 10. I called 10 different sales agents, like sales offices.
Mhm.
And just to see how the experience was, right? And it was not wonderful at all. I think I had one out of the no, I know I had one out of those 10 that was super helpful, talking about the community, talking about what my next steps would need to be, asking me questions, right? Those kinds of things. The others, some didn't even respond to a voicemail. Um,
Mhm.
Others, it was like I had to ask all the questions and I was getting very short, kind of just like canned responses. And I thought, wow, there's so much room to like
Mhm.
nurture. So you have someone on the phone, right? Like
Yeah.
from a
You have
sales
their
perspective, you have
attention.
someone on the phone reaching out to you, um, and asking questions. And it's like, those are the kinds of questions. Why don't we answer those? Send a follow-up email. Make sure those questions are answered in an email nurture sequence. Post about it on
Mhm.
social. Write a blog about it and put it on your website. Like home buyers are craving information, and I think
Yeah, that's
I
a
think we
miss.
just need to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, do we have one more,
The
right?
other one was okay. The other one was, and this I learned less from, because I do a lot of Reddit research, which I think
Mhm.
most people go, oh, I didn't even think about that. But it is a treasure trove of consumer insights. And I'm on
Mhm.
a bunch of real estate, first time home buyers, home builders. There's a Reddit thread and a Reddit community for every single topic you can think of. Um, but people are home buyers, they're taking all the big headlines, which we all do in the market around the
Yeah.
economy, and then they're blowing up these threads, and it's just a bunch of negative, right? Like nothing's affordable. We'll never be able to afford a house. Well, da da da, right? And I thought, if we could communicate, it doesn't mean that we have to, because what's happening is happening, but if we can communicate and educate the home buyer about what's happening in the market and the economy and how it's going to affect their experience, like as home
Mhm.
builders, if we can
Mhm.
take the reins there, it puts them more it gives them a bit more control, right? Of their experience. Like, okay,
Yeah.
this is what's happening. This is what I need to do. It all goes back to that education. So I really think making sure that you acknowledge what's happening in the market, being transparent and open about it, and then offering ways to help them. Like, what
Mhm.
does the home builder do in order to offset some of these prices, incentives? Like, I know a lot of builders are good about communicating those incentives, but address what's happening in the market and the economy as a whole, and
Mhm.
apply it to how you help your home buyers.
Is there anything that it is interesting? I know you're on Reddit, that you feel like a home builder should be doing in that space to create or curate different content, since you feel like there's so much maybe more on the negative side, or is it really just a place to go be an ear? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, no, I mean, it definitely helps to be an ear, but there's definitely things. Okay, here's something that people say all the time. And this isn't just on Reddit. This is through interviews too, but they perceive today's, like, the quality of construction today to be less than the quality of construction back in the day. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe how many people say that. And I'm thinking, home builders built homes back in the day too, right? Like, what is,
Yeah.
but it spreads like wildfire on some of these
Mhm.
threads, right? Well, builders are building on top of each other, or they're using cheap materials or whatever. And I thought there's definitely, again, a way to address this information. So you're listening and you're hearing it on or reading about it in Reddit. What can we say? How can we just address it? Where it's like, actually, we're using these materials, we're using these sustainable practices, we're using these things, right?
Yeah, there's so much more technology and the opportunity for quality in the materials that wasn't around, say, 50 years ago. But there's the perception of the craftsmanship, the hand, and the speed at which we build. So the speed at which we build, when someone says that builder is building a home in 45 days, you immediately want to say, how can it be built well, right? And there's questions around that, right? So that would go back to the builder of what is our Q&A process? Why do we build fast? There's things in the production process that people don't know outside of the hammer and the nail that improve efficiencies, but that isn't talked about in a way that can make the customer know, how can you build a quality home in 60 days, 90 days, or whatever your cycle time is by builder.
Right.
And if you don't talk about it and you do offer a bad product, it doesn't help the rest of the industry.
So true. So true.
Yeah. So love those truths. I'm sure, again, like there's so many. And hopefully we put in to talk about this topic at IBS, and we put it out in the universe that we did submit. Hopefully we could give some more demonstrated conversations around how these truths work. So I want to switch gears to watch our time. How are you using, I believe you posted on the other day, how are you using AI? AI has been a topic that I'm kind of peppering in with some of these tech talks. How do you use it in your work? I think other people may be able to learn something from some of your experiences.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been doing is, like, with customer data, I honestly get sick of saying the word data, because it's like, it's just information, right? But like, how do you organize it? You can have a lot of home builders, a lot of companies in general are sitting on a lot of data. They just don't know what to do with it. Right.
Yeah.
So, but AI makes, oh my gosh, it makes it so much easier. So what I do is I take the data, like I take information, all the things that home buyers are saying, Reddit threads. So that's a good example. There's 120 comments on a Reddit thread about their favorite part of buying a new home, right? That was a real thing.
Yeah.
And I input it into ChatGTP. You need to have ChatGTP 4.0, which is, I think, $20 a month, but you input it into there, and you can literally prompt it that says, take this information and give me 5 key themes that you're reading from the data. Within a minute, it's called out. Like, our favorite part was the new home, that no one's lived there. The second thing was, the newness of it. The third thing was the design center. The design center experience was amazing. It was like we were dreaming through, what our new house would be. So it literally just called it out right there. And from a marketing and sales standpoint, you can easily take that information and say, okay, let's test, because marketing is all about testing, right? Let's test some of these email subject lines. Let's test some of our social content. Let's give these five like talking points to our sales team and say, here, let's focus on these, because home buyers are saying that this is what they need, right? We can test things. We don't have to spend hours like getting the data, organizing the data, putting in an Excel spreadsheet like that. I think those days are gone. Yeah. I've been doing it with AI, and it's been.
Yeah, it can save a ton of time. And again, people are looking for those ideas, on how they get started with AI. So definitely follow Lindsey for some of those tips and tricks. I know you're sharing more of that stuff in your LinkedIn channel. One last question on technology. So I know you're having conversations about experience, but let's talk about, is technology in the mix? Our builders could you work with builders be working with you to test their user experiences and technology to further make it better? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the way I would look at that is, home buyers tell you what they need, right? And so they might not say, oh, we need a sitemap, because consumers don't know what a sitemap is, but they may say, oh, I wanted more pictures. I wanted to be able to see better what I was on vacation. I knew I couldn't come to the property for, a month or whatever. Like I wanted to be able to see more what I could get. I wanted to see the neighborhood. I wanted to, there's definitely things from their perspective that we can produce from a technology standpoint, right? Like renderings and all those kinds of experiences.
So translate the need into what products as a marketer should I be offering on my site that I'm not. If more people are saying, I couldn't get a sense of, the lay of the land and where how my home was situated with my neighbors, or I couldn't get a sense of what finishes you would offer, and if this house was really in my style. Me and my husband have very unique styles. Or is it going to work? They're giving you some kind of feedback about style, location, place. That's where the marketer has to say, wow, our buyers aren't getting enough sticky information to move forward. I'm guessing, as you're saying, they're not going to. I think that's a good point. Like they're like, I need an interactive floor plan. They don't even know what that is.
No.
I need an IFP. What's an IFP?
But I have heard a few buyers say, I want to see like what like when you walk out your front door to go walk your dog, what is your neighbor like? What does it look like when you walk out your front door and you make a left, right? And your street. And I know there's street views and things like that, but like one of the ideas that I had shared with the builder was on social media, like go when you have a realtor or the salesperson, when you're there, like take a video of walking out, turning the street, like let's show people what it looks like, what it feels like.
Yeah, that's super, super important. Well, we do keep these short. I think you and I could always talk. We've had 20-minute turn into 90-minute conversations easily, but love your insights, love your tie to psychology and really digging into the customer. So I think you provide so much value to the industry. I do hope people connect with you, and thank you for bringing a whole different topic to Tek Talk today. Thank you so much for being a guest today, Lindsey. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.